That's what I'm wanting.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, what we're going to try to explain here is what we've got into now with our land use planning and zoning. The discussion is over placement of animal feeding operations, which are, we're going to specifically talk about chicken houses and turkey houses. The chicken houses are, most of them in the county are already regulated under IDM standards, which is 100 foot from the property line, 100 foot from the center of the road, and 400 foot from the closest neighbor's house. That's they have an exemption for their own house on the animal feeding operators do, so they can put their house anywhere they want on the property and not have a problem with it. Currently, the turkey houses are not regulated, and that's what the intent of the zoning is to regulate the unregulated houses to some sort of a standard. I'm going to go through and start out and give you a basic idea what the chicken houses and turkey houses are like a similar size, like 500-foot long buildings, almost interchangeable. They have put turkeys in what used to be chicken houses, and they got the possibility some of the chicken operators were looking into maybe starting to raise turkeys. So it's basically the same building, capable of performing the same function. But I'm just going to start in on here on the placement of the building and how much ground it actually affects. What I've started off with here is two buildings. There are other configurations, but I'm going to say a two-building configuration here. They're typically like 500 foot long, and they're like 40 or 50 foot wide. So I'm going to put 50 foot wide, and 100 feet between them. That space takes up 200 feet wide by 500 feet for a footprint. And I'm going to have to divide that by 43,650 to get the acreage. That turns out to be 2.29 acres. Not a real big footprint here for the buildings themselves and the gravel lane between them. Now that's just going to be my basic building just for the purpose of the rest of the time. Now I've laid this out. What we're looking at is with the state, what is IDM state regulated requires a 100-foot setback from the property lines. And I've drawn here the same two buildings on this 2.29 acres that the footprint takes up. You've got to be 100 foot each direction for the minimum standard towards the road or whatever. This is going to be a radius rather than a square corner because that's where the corner of the building is to where it actually has to be away from the property line. You're probably not going to buy any ground with round corners, but this will come into play a little bit later on so you see where the calculations come from. To start with, to figure the radius, to figure the area in these radiuses, I got to start off with the formula pi r squared. That's going to be 100 feet is what the radius is, times 100 feet, divided by 43,650. Whoa. I'm going to back up here a minute. This also supposed to be times pi. You take that number there and divide it by 43,650, and what you end up with for the radius of these corners is 0.719. Then you got to divide by 4 to get all four pieces because it's like 4 pieces of a pie there, but eventually we're going to add all 4 of them back together, so you may as well let this number stand. Now I will need to find out how much area this side takes up. Well, it's 500 foot long times 100. Well, 500 times the 100. And I'm going to divide that by 43,650. That's going to end up with 1.14 acres. 1.14 for this for the right side, and the left side is going to be the same. So I'm going to add it 1.14 in as well. Now, the front and the back of the building, it's just 200 foot wide, what my footprint is, times 100. 200 times 100 divided by the 43,650. And that gives me 0.46 acres on the front and 0.46 acres on the back. Now, how much ground have I actually affected here? Well, I got to take what my footprint is here in the middle. I take all 4 corners to make my radius here. I take the left and the right and the front and the back and the initial footprint to start together, and I add it all together, and I end up with 6.21 acres. And that's what's affected by this. But to square off the ground, I'm going to make it easier. I'm going to go 200 feet plus 100 plus 100, 400 foot wide. And I'm 500 foot long plus 100 at the front 6 and one back 7. And I'm going to divide that by 43, 650. And I'm going to end up with 6.41 acres. That's where I came up with the reasoning that I could put 2 chicken houses on less than 7 acres legally, because this meets IDM standards as far as the setback distances. Now, I'm going to go on. This is a 400 foot setback. This is the reciprocal setback they were talking about that had been proposed of 400 feet from the corners of the building to the nearest house other than the CAFO operator or animal feeding operator's house, which they have an exemption. They can build anywhere on the property that they own that they want. But the neighbors will be affected by this. So let's just go ahead and work out the distances on this. Do the same formula, 400 times 400 times pi, or 3.14. Divide that by 43, 650. And that gives you 11.51 acres for all 4 of them put together. You got to divide by 4 to find each one, but you're going to add them all 4 back together, so you may as well leave it alone. Now we're going to go with the side acreage here. That's 500 feet long building and a 400 this way. So I'm going to go 500 times 400 and divide that by 43, 650. And that's going to give me 4.58 acres for the right and 4.5 acres for the left. Now I need to find the front and the back. I'm still just 200 foot wide because I'm using the same example I started with, and 400 foot back. So I might go 400 foot back times the 200 foot wide, divide that by 43, 650, and I end up with 0.46, no, 1.83 acres. And 1.83 acres at the back. Check my numbers again right quick. Okay, and then I have to add the 2.29 acres of the initial footprint, and that puts me at 26.62 acres. So I'm starting off buying less than 7 acres, but I control 26.62 acres is affected with a 400 foot setback. Now, if I wanted to buy this ground myself, I'd probably have to buy it squared off. So that would be 400 foot plus 200 foot plus 400 foot. Or for my distances, that's going to be 1,000 foot wide times my 500 foot long building plus 400 at the front plus 400 at the back, 1,300 feet. And then I got to divide that by 43,650. And that equals 29.78 acres. So if I want to control, if I wanted to buy a big enough piece of ground to have a 400 foot setback, I would have to purchase this much ground. But with the reciprocal setback, it says I can buy less ground and put this footprint in wherever I want it, right up closer to the property line. And with the reciprocal, this other 20 acres is my neighbor's acres that I'm taking away from them. The rights to build on them taken away from them. With a chicken house right now, they have to be 400 foot from the nearest neighbor anyway. So the nearest neighbor's house is going to be outside of the limit. But that don't mean they don't have property in there they were intended to build on later on. There may be other lots here in front, especially across the road with the road frontage, that people bought what they intend to build on later on, but they're not going to be able to if reciprocal goes through.
Especially for turkey houses is a problem right now. They don't have a distance from the property line they have to stay away from. So they can buy the 7 acres and set it right up against the property line here and right up against the road here. And they actually going to control the neighbor's ground on the left and the right and the front and what's behind them. That's other people's property. They won't be able to build on it, but if they'll sell the land, they can build on it. Because they have an exemption saying they can build anywhere they want within the distance of their feeding operation. That's the problem with the reciprocal, is it takes away from the neighbors. The worst part is, if it's a turkey house, it don't even have to concern with the 400 foot from the nearest neighbor to start with. They can build with a neighbor being within that 400 foot distance because there's no restrictions on them at this point in time. And after reciprocal setback goes through, the house that they've scooted up next to, that's within that 400 foot distance, is now considered non-compliant with zoning. This individual may own this property for 35 years and been paying taxes on it all along. And not only does the property value drop because the exhaust fans are blowing towards their house, possibly, but their house is considered non-compliant with zoning. And the thing with zoning, when you're non-compliant, the intention of zoning in the book says that it is to eventual elimination of all non-compliant uses. That means this house eventually will no longer be considered a residence. It might, while the initial owner lives there, but down the road they could say, no, that's non-compliant. You can't sell it as a house. You can sell it as a storage shed or whatever else they might come up with. That's something that's still unknown, but the basic premise of zoning is to eliminate all non-compliant usage. Now, I'm going to go over to the next picture. This is the same thing. Suppose the ideal flue of 750 foot setback from the property line. And most likely you're going to square off the property as well, but we're going to go ahead and do the radius and see where we come to with that. With a 750 foot radius, you're going to, for the four corners, you're going to come up with 750 times 750 times pi divided by 43,650, and you're going to come up with 40.46 acres. And then you're going to go 750 wide times a 500 divided by 43,650, and that's going to give you 8.59 acres to the left, 8.59 acres to the right. And then the front property is going to be 200 wide, but it's going to be 750 long, divided by 43,650, and that's going to equal 3.44 acres to the front and 3.44 acres to the back, plus your initial 2.29 acres that you started with, and that's going to give you 66.81 acres. That's an impact zone there. You'd have to buy to square off the ground. You'd have to go 750 plus 750 plus 200. It'll be 1,700 by 750 plus 750 plus 500. 2,043, 650. 77.89 acres. To be within your property line, 750 foot from a property line distance all the way around. So you could buy a little less than 80 acres and you could put this where it has no impact on any other neighbor whatsoever, no matter where they're at the 750 range. Now, their complaint is that, well, you can't find no place in the county that's you don't want to have to buy that many acres and all that good stuff. Well, the answer for that is, if all this ground behind you is row crop ground owned by your uncle, and he'll sign off on, so you don't have to have that much setback. If he'll say, I'll let you get within 100 feet of me, the proposal is that you get him to sign off on this so that reduces the acreage you need. And in your dad's place, he's over on the right, or the left, he can let you move in so close to him. And then what's owned across the road, if you get everybody to sign off on your setback distances, agreement with the neighbors, you can get down to small acreage again. But if you got houses over here that's not acceptable to that, that's going to be within its zone, you're going to have to set back further into the field one way or another to get where you're a reasonable distance to be away from your neighbors. And that's but you still won't have to buy that many acres to do that. I mean, you may be put in a position where you have to buy this 20 acres across the road plus this ground that you're actually setting on to be able to control the setback area distance. And whether you buy it or whether you the property straight out or whether you just buy the rights off the neighbor, that's what's being considered, where we'll have less of an impact on the neighbors. But the idea is to come up with something where the operator actually owns or controls the setback rather than putting the burden on the neighbor who gets no profit off the operation. How's that?
And that's good. That's good. And the reason for 750 is because that's currently for chicken CAFOs. That's currently what is on the books for our county. So
from a house.
From a house.
Not from the property line, but from a house.
Right. So that's why 750 came up.
But it was also floated at the commissioner meeting that maybe they needed to look at it from the property line rather than just from a house. When this reciprocal come up and was having a hard time gaining traction and support, there's an outcry of the community that they didn't want to lose their property rights for somebody else to profit from. The general feeling was that if you want to make money with your land, that's fine, but I should have the right to do something with my land too.
Okay. That's good. All right.